In this fall, and it's hard for me to even say this, but in this fall, I'm going to be taking my talents to Fiorano, Italy, and joining Scuderia Ferrari. Okay, but then, like, if I transitioned into a Ferrari top, which I haven't bought yet, that would have been kind of tough. I'm just saying, because I'll be real, I was a Lewis fan before I was a McLaren fan, before I was a Mercedes fan. So I go where Lewis goes. Forza Ferrari. But yeah, there's no time to waste really because the championship starts on Sunday morning and Lando Norris is winning it. McLaren are winning the constructors. No doubt in my mind. Lando was pruned during this 2024 season where he had a baptism of fire. Like Max showed him shege, to put it simply. Mentally, he's admitted that he's too nice almost and too sympathetic and not. He doesn't have that dog in him. And I'd like to believe the dog was activated. The race starts are a worry because he's such a great qualifier. After Charles, Lando's a top three qualifier on the grid. Charles is number one. You can argue Max is number two, but then Lando has to be right up there. Maybe George, Mr. Saturday. But the race starts were an issue. Get on pole, loses the first corner. It happened at least 5 times, or that's what it felt like anyway. But I'd like to think he's exercised those demons. I'd also like to think it's not him. It can't, well, it's not just him because when you check the reaction times, it's not like he's reacting slowly. It's that second phase, which makes it think, is it, maybe it's, Piastri didn't have the same issue, so maybe it's his, I don't know if it's setup or his throttle application. That I don't know what it is with that second phase, but it's clearly the second phase that's causing an issue. Um, I'd like to think he's hashed that out. You know, Abu Dhabi, I think, was a statement performance that, you know, I'm here, I'm ready now. I would say Singapore if he didn't almost bin it like twice. There were, and when you go through last season, there were many missed opportunities. You know, Lando should have won or could have won Imola. He should have won Canada, but got unlucky. You know, his pace merited more wins, and this season I think he's going to win at least 7 races. It's not going to be a dominant season. I think it's going to be very, very competitive because I think Ferrari are going to be right there pushing in the constructors with the strongest driver lineup in recent memory, not in history, but in recent memory. And I rate Oscar Piastri very highly. I do, but Lando won 24 in qualifying. And yes, if you actually look at the individual races, it was close, but I think it's very disingenuous when people are like, oh, Piastri's going to beat him, he's mentally stronger. Cool, Piastri's, you know, he's an Iceman. He doesn't get rattled. He's sort of that Kimi, he's like a blend between Kimi and Max almost. Way closer to the Kimi side in terms of very chilled. It's hard to, to shake him off his pivot. But Lando's just better. Like, that's the simple fact. Lando's racecraft is better. Lando's actually not racecraft. No racecraft. We saw what happened in Austria, and that was quite poor. I actually rated Lando's racecraft very highly, but that was quite bad. His race management is better, and he's quicker. So I don't see why people think Piastri is just going to suddenly leapfrog him. 24 in qualifying, regardless of how small the gap is, whether it was a tenth or a tenth and a half. That's seismic. That's convincing. And I think a good season for Piastri is if it goes to 14.8. You know, that's a good turnaround. I can't remember how many races there are in the calendar this year, but 14.8 is also what I'm expecting in the Lewis versus Charles battle, unfortunately. And I expect Charles to win 14 times. Just because, again, he's the best qualifier on the grid. And yes, Lewis is said to be happier with the Ferrari car, said to be happier that they are listening to his feedback, etc. You know, his placement in the car physically, and, you know, the ground effect on a whole has not suited his driving style, but he seems to be acclimatizing better to this car. And that's obviously positive because a comfortable Lewis is a dangerous Lewis. And Lewis is hungry, he's motivated. I mean, the aura, oh, it's off the charts. It's generally off the charts, and that counts for something, you know? Um, but I just struggle to see him beat Charles, who is the second best driver in the world behind Max Verstappen, had the season of his life, the best qualifier on the grid. His racecraft is also immense. It's a struggle because this is not prime Lewis Hamilton. Well, this is not peak Lewis Hamilton. And this happens in a lot of sports where people are like, oh, he's aging like a fine wine. Sure, he's still performing at a very high level, but it's disingenuous to how great they used to be to say this is still their prime. This is not prime Lewis Hamilton. That's okay. He's 40 years old, you know. I think he will win multiple races and he will be a competitor, but I don't know. It feels like, I feel like I'm doing myself a disservice and doing every Lewis fan a disservice by not just blindly saying, the same way I blindly said Lando is going to win. I'm not blindly saying Lewis is going to beat Charles, but I don't necessarily need to see it to believe it because I have faith in him. And I don't believe he's going to have the floor wiped with him or anything. He's going to be slightly more competitive than Carlos was because he's a better driver than Carlos Sainz. But Charles is Ferrari's golden point. He's been there for 8 years now. That is a blatant lie. He's been there for 6 years. Sorry. He's 27. You know, he's literally in the form of his life. So I find it difficult to imagine a 40-year-old Lewis coming and just, saying like, I'm him. 2026 is a different story because there's no DRS. They're going to a system where Lewis and Alonso are the only ones that have driven without DRS in Formula One. And that is going to pay dividends. I think Lewis has a better chance of beating him next year. But this first year, embed yourself in the team, against Button the first time, actually Lewis won straight away. Against Nico, 2013, it took a year, Rosberg was better a lot of the time, but, you could still see Lewis was clearly Lewis Hamilton, and that was in his peak. Actually, arguably not his peak, but that was young, like that yellow McLaren helmet Lewis Hamilton going into Mercedes was a demon, to put it simply. So I think that's, if it wasn't obvious enough, I think McLaren and Ferrari are going to be the top two. After that, I'm kind of torn because Red Bull's driver lineup is stronger than Mercedes because Liam Lawson has proven more than Antonelli to this point. Antonelli's potential is exponentially higher, but up until this point, you have to take it at face value. Max is better than George and Liam is better than Kimi. So Red Bull's lineup goes higher. But actually, I low-key trust Red Bull more in terms of car development as well. Mercedes, I just have to see it to believe it. Because right now, the optimal window is in cold weather. And that only applies to a select few races, which is why they won Silverstone where it's cold. They won Spa where it's cold. Canada where it's cold. George had it on pole and then bottled it. Those are the races where they're managing to hang around the top. And I don't see that changing. I think McLaren are going to have a stranglehold to start with. And Ferrari are going to be very competitive. Red Bull, I feel like Max is going to win 3 races minimum. But not more than 5. Actually, no, he's not winning. It's 2 to 4. To be honest, I don't think Red Bull are going to have a great season. They will do well to finish third, and I think they will finish third over Mercedes, but it will be very tight. I think there'll be a distinct gap between first and second in McLaren, Ferrari, and then Red Bull and Mercedes, and then it's going to take a dive. But I think that dive is going to be, what do they call themselves? Atleti Williams? Carlos Sainz is an immense driver. I can't stress that enough. Carlos Sainz is an immense driver, and Albon is very talented. Obviously not as good as Sainz, and I don't want to say he's going to be exposed, but I think there's going to be a clear delta between the two, like a tenth and a half. Because what Colapinto did to Albon was unsettle him, and Sainz is comfortably clear of Colapinto, so I don't know how he's going to respond to that threat. I hope he's able to stay in the sport. Obviously, I don't think he's going to be dominated to that extent, but I'd imagine like a 15-7 quali job, something of that ilk. But we'll see, because obviously, Carlos still has to adjust to a new team. It's not a given, but I trust in Williams, and this is almost blind faith in the sense that their car literally may not be good enough to validate how good their driver lineup is, and they won't be able to score the points. But I think this is going to be one of those seasons where 1st to 8th is monopolized by the big 4. Monopolized. I don't think Aston Martin get up to 75 points. And of that 75, Alonso is going to have at least 60. They didn't clock 100 last year, and I think it's going to get even worse. Alpine got lucky with 2 podiums that got them 6th in the constructors when Haas were better all year. So I think Haas will be better this year. Alpine, they're not fluking a podium this year. Terribly sorry. I think it's going to be different. When you go to the lower echelon, I think Racing Bulls are pulling up the rear almost certainly. Tsunoda will deal with Isaac Hajar. Not that I don't rate Hajar. I think Tsunoda is at this point underrated. He deserved that Red Bull seat. He's never going to get it. You can argue he only ever got the AlphaTauri seat because of the Honda connection. Now that's gone. So I hope when Alonso retires, he's the one that takes the Aston Martin job and is another guy to put hands on Lance Stroll, who just needs to pack it up, bro. Like, the sport's not for you, and it's actually okay. It's not by force to be a Formula One driver. I promise you there is life outside that. Then Sauber is an interesting one, a very interesting one, because Bortoleto is in that rarefied air of F3 and F2 back-to-back champions in the rookie season. But I don't get the same vibes I got off of Kimi Antonelli, even though he didn't accomplish that. I don't get the same vibes I got off, dare I say, Dragovic, or not even Leclerc, Piastri, Russell. That's the tier that I'm looking at when I say back-to-back F3, F2 champion, and I don't see him in quite that level. I'd say a slight level below, which is that Hülkenberg Sainz tier. And that might sound egregious, but Hülkenberg and Sainz in a tier together, but Renault, Hülkenberg literally beat Sainz. So that sort of tier where it's like, you are capable of winning a race, even though Hülkenberg hasn't proven it. I think he has the talent to do it. It just hasn't put it together. And he will win races maybe in the future, but I don't see him being that sort of generation-defining talent. And I don't think that's a disrespectful thing to say. The other rookie of note, really, because Jack Doohan's career is going to last about 5 races. Shout out to bro. Is Ollie Behrman, who I think is very talented. I think his F2 season was really confusing and hard to grasp. Kimi obviously performed better. And I wanted to see a little bit more out of him, but the Prema car obviously was a bit of a handful. They both struggled and they were both regarded so highly, which tells me it's not the drivers, it was the car. Prema clearly didn't, grasp the new concept particularly well. But I think at Haas, he will do well. I don't think he beats Ocon just yet because I do rate Ocon very highly. Ocon held his own against Fernando Alonso when he came back into the sport. And again, that's not an easy thing to do. Did he beat Alonso? No. But he held his own. So I think it's not ridiculous with this lack of testing nowadays that rookies have. It's not ridiculous to say that Ocon will beat Behrman. I don't think any of the rookies beat their established teammates, to be honest. And there's like 6 of them. I don't think any of them will. And nor should we expect them to. Not every rookie is going to hit the ground running. Not every rookie is going to be an Oscar Piastri where they're winning sprint races straight away. Not every rookie is going to be Lewis Hamilton where he's competing for a championship. And that is fine. We're not asking everyone to be the best we've seen. That's totally fine. But yeah, I think it's going to be a very, very exciting season. I think all 4 constructors will get wins. Mercedes, I think, will get like 1. It's going to be George. There is a world where Kimi gets a win on a random weekend. But I don't think there'll be a weekend where Kimi like actually outclasses everybody. It's entirely possible because of his talent, his raw talent. You can tell he's got it. There's a certain je ne sais quoi that drivers have, and he has it. That's the simplest way I can put it. Someone like Pierre Gasly, who I already said it, skinhead Gasly. I'm not a fan. I like him as a person, but he needs to clean his bar. But just saying, I think he's just going to be a strong midfield driver, but I don't know how many opportunities he's going to have to score points. Obviously, Flavio Briatore is back in the picture, and that's why Colapinto's been lined up to replace Doohan. But I'm not convinced by Alpine at all, and I haven't been for a while. Sauber, we've already talked about. The car's going to be awful. I think maybe Bortoleto does outscore Hülkenberg because he gets like 1 point, but I think Sauber could generally struggle. I think they're going to be better than they looked last year because I think Hülkenberg is better than Bottas, and obviously Bortoleto is better than Guan Yu Zhou, but I don't think it's going to be by much. And Williams, again, I'm almost manifesting Williams having a competitive car. By competitive, I mean just top of the midfield. I just want to see Sainz and Albon in the points. That's all I ask for, because I think drivers of that caliber deserve it. Now that I think of midfield drivers, damn, this is the first season in like 14 years without Sergio Perez, which is a weird thought. K-Mag is gone, but K-Mag had periods out already. Perez has been a constant on our screens for over a decade. So life without him in Formula One, there's no weekly Red Bull crashes. I'm manifesting on Liam's behalf that doesn't happen, which is a weird thought, a very weird thought. But back to the boys at the top. I think I'm going to do another video on the drivers that are under the most pressure entering this season. Maybe I'll wait a couple of races. But yeah, I just think it's Lando's time, truly. Not everyone gets that second chance, that second bite of the cherry, but I think that baptism of fire will have helped him because he wasn't ready last year.
She wasn't ready. She wasn't ready.
He wasn't ready. Simply put, he had the speed. And I think sometimes people are overly harsh on him and criticize him too harshly. Like the whole Lando no wins, when he clearly had the talent to win, 1, and B, he clearly had limited opportunities to win. Because how many times was Lando a favorite in a race? Russia, was he expected to win that race? No. Obviously got in the position and then bottled it. But if my 20-year-old driver is telling me I don't want to pit in the rain, tell him to pit. Mercedes told Lewis Hamilton to pit. They said, no, come in. Because that's what a serious team does. And it's so ironic that now McLaren are the serious team and Mercedes are a bunch of wild lads. But, how the turntables turn, such is life. And F1's a very dynamic sport. Things change very quickly. So it's entirely possible McLaren start the season with the best car, Ferrari take over midway. That would be a change, because before, in previous years, Vettel's title charges, Ferrari would start very strong and then fade away later on this season. Maybe it would be the other way around. We just don't know. There will be periods where somebody brings an upgrade package and things change. McLaren brought an upgrade package to Miami last year and their season transformed. Suddenly there were title challenges. That package comes a few races earlier. Who knows what happens? Max probably still wins considering the way that season went. But yeah, I feel like maybe it's wishful thinking, but I generally think this is Lando's time. If not Lando, I think it's Charles' time, because he's he's so razor focused, and I love that about him. Like, even when you're watching Drive to Survive, seeing his interviews, he's like, everything I do is to become world champion. That's always been the dream, and I like that. Don't shy away from it. That's what we're here for. You know, we want to see winners, we want to see dog, we want to see personality, and I will always respect that. Will I respect it if he wipes the floor with my goat? Huh. We'll see. But Lewis Hamilton is him, so I don't see that happening. He will be very competitive for sure. He's winning multiple races, no doubt in my mind. Charles will as well, Piastri will as well, Max will as well, George will get at least one. I don't think it's going to be a season where we have a freak winner, unless Antonelli or Lawson, who are in the Red Bull and Mercedes, count as freak winners, because I don't see them beating those 6 others on any given weekend. And by the 6 others, it's 2 McLaren, 2 Ferrari, Max and George. I feel like that's a very tall order for anybody. I think Alonso might be frustrated at the end of the season, but he won't give up simply because Adrian Newey is working on the 2026 car, and that's always been the last hurrah. If that doesn't work, then you pack it up. But beforehand, I feel like you have to give them a chance. But yeah, I'm excited for this season. I think I'm going to say Brazil or Silverstone is going to be the best race of the season. Season opener is going to be good. Rain-soaked Australia is going to be good. I'm excited. I'm waking up at 4, 5, 6 a.m., whatever it commands. We will be there. We will be there. But yeah, we'll do more videos, you know, post Grand Prix, etc. And I'll definitely talk about the drivers I think are under the most pressure. I've already alluded to Lando's because that one's kind of self-explanatory. You know, he did let an opportunity slip last year. There was a world where Lando won that title and arguably should have won that title. And he only has 4 race wins. Number 4 has 4 race wins to his name, and he should have more. He should literally double his tally by July. Like, I need to see a clinical Lando Norris. He needs to show that he's number 1 in that team, because papaya rules does not exist. You know, if Piastri comes out all guns blazing, Piastri is going to be the number 1. They'll prioritize him in the title challenge, and rightfully so. Obviously, if they're clear, they'll just let them fight it out, but they'll prioritize whichever one of them is ahead at a certain stage, like any serious team would. Again, I hope this is me somewhat projecting. But yeah, I think Lando's going to win 2 of the first 3 races, and I think he's going to be on job this year, and he's going to mentally lock in. Lando, please. I've stuck my neck out way too much for you to let me down, big bro. Big bro is crazy. This guy's like 2 years older than me. But yeah, Lando's win the title. Hamilton will have a great season at Ferrari, so will Charles. They'll finish 2nd and 4th. Piastri's going to be up there. We know who the front 4 is going to be. I refuse to accept that Verstappen is just going to come and like dominate again. I can't even fathom it. George, there is a world where Mercedes just shock everybody, but from testing, I don't think so. And I was very intentional about not watching testing so that this is authentic or more authentic. But yeah, let me know what you think. Who's winning the title this year? Big question.